I could sit here and talk legal tech all day, every day, because just as you were talking about before, the process is part of a business is where the secret sauce is.
Right. Well, and if you're not developing in the process, then you're creating roadblocks.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it's not just like tech talk or like business, chatter. It's all about delivering the best product for the client.
Exactly.
And so if I'm creating a bottleneck that slows down the process of getting the funds out the door, right? So for us, we have a 30-day window for settlements. You settle a case, I want the client walking out of my office with a check within 30 days.
Yeah.
Why? Because if it takes longer than 30 days,
they're very frustrated.
they're going to be really unhappy.
Yeah.
Right. And so, but that means you've got to do all these things in order, like you've got to be really on the ball, ready to go.
Make sure you're holding the insurer's feet to the fire.
Right.
Have we followed up? Has the check gotten lost in the mail?
Right. Medicare,
Medicare
Medicaid,
liens.
hospital liens, loans, whatever, have you wrapped your hand around all the costs? Welcome to Above the Legal Limit. I'm your host, Justin Chopin, business owner, lawyer, dad, world's best husband, traveler, and adventure seeker. On this podcast, we mix business with pleasure. We'll dive into growth strategies, entrepreneurial adventures, the business of law, and prove that business isn't boring. So let's get ready because we are going above the legal limit. Welcome to Above the Legal Limit. Very special guest today, Amanda Butler Schley.
There you go.
But so it's difficult for me because I've known you for many years as Amanda Butler. Yeah. So when I struggle with your last name, please don't be offended. I don't know anyone's name. I'm horrible. I'm the worst politician. I don't know anybody's name in this room. But with Business Law Group, so I'm super excited to talk to you about your practice. But I need to, from the outset, say, you're probably, if you're watching this, you're not. But we're someone to find this like in an archive somewhere. You'll notice that we're not in the usual white sort of conference room because we are at the Bell in New Orleans, which is a relatively new English pub. So we're going to do the whole day at the Bell. We're knocking out all of our podcasts for the month. We're going to talk to the owner. We're going to have Amanda here, some other guests. Maybe later we're going to like pound a bunch of Guinness before I have to go pick up my kids from school.
That sounds like a plan.
Yeah. So super excited to be at the Bell and super excited. So hi, Amanda.
Hi, Justin.
Talk to me about the Business Law Group.
Sure.
When did you start that?
I went out on my own.
It's been a while.
In 2017.
I thought so, yeah.
So it's been a few years at this point. I went out actually because my husband and I sold both of our houses. We moved on to a 42-foot sailboat.
Okay.
And we sailed the Gulf Coast with the plan to go to the Caribbean and ultimately do a circumnavigation. We got as far as Florida.
Okay. Well,
so
hey,
we didn't quite make it through.
Didn't make the entire Earth.
We didn't.
But you got the panhandle.
I did. And we spent many months, about 18 months along the Gulf Coast, which was so fascinating, really interesting, and kind of knew that was not going to go over very well with either a large law firm or even a small law firm at that point. So
unless you're at my law firm, in which case, I don't know, times are different. So we kind of grew up in the same era of practicing law.
Right.
But the new generation, like I'll just get calendar entries. It's like a heads up. I'm going to be in Portugal for 2 weeks.
Right.
Or like, hey, I'm going to Pamplona. I'm like, what? Of course you are. Like, okay, it's like a where in the world are my associates today? And they're everywhere. They're like, oh, I can't, man. I'm going to be in Bora Bora for a while. So, but if you were in the defense practice like we were in a commercial and corporate practice, that wasn't a thing.
It was not a thing, and I thought it should be a thing.
So
I made it a thing.
Awesome.
And so that was, I was very entrepreneurial, always have been, and knew that I wanted to hang a shingle one day. I think this was the impetus to get me there. And so took the plunge. My mom always said, my mother is also a lawyer. I know your dad's a lawyer. But my mom said, when you have one good client, that's what you need in order to be able to hang a shingle. And I had been working with the Ruby Slipper for a couple of years, and they were slowly growing little by little. We had grown from 2 locations at that point to 6.
Yeah, I was going to say, they're like not a small client now. They're like a big operation. 26. Not all here, right? I mean, they've got to be.
They're all along the Gulf Coast and up through even to North Carolina.
I don't think I knew that. Okay.
So they've done amazing. They were the fastest growing brunch concept, and I really grew as they grew. And I think the reason that we didn't get further with the circumnavigation had a lot to do with how much work. I did kind of think that I'd hang my shingle. I wouldn't have too much to worry about. And of course, God laughs when you make those types of plans.
Right.
And he said, well, here is
watch this.
a $50 million M&A deal that you could work on. And here is, all of these various opportunities that I just couldn't pass up. So I think ultimately I was too ambitious to continue with that kind of digital nomad lifestyle. And hence I'm back here full time.
You know what? Life has a way, people want to call it destiny. I like to call it luck. Like, I just got lucky, and I got lucky enough times in a row that it kind of turned into something.
Yeah.
But I always feel like I was meant to be, a plaintiff's lawyer. I was just stuck in another world, and taking that step to hang your shingle is, it's terrifying. And I didn't have like a corporate client, right? So I had like a small handful of clients, but they weren't going to pay me, right? I had to kind of put their case together. I had to finance their case before I could have a nickel. So, but yeah, I much like, it sounds like what you're saying is very similar to my sort of experience. And that, in law school, I always thought like, oh, I think it'd be cool to be a plaintiff's lawyer, but that's very frowned upon.
How'd that go over with your dad?
Dad never really cared. My mother's also a lawyer. My mother was like, that's a horrible idea. You're going to be poor and you'll never have clients. And, it's too inconsistent and it's feast or famine, because she worked in the Gretna courthouse for many years. And so she saw a much different practice. I mean, Dad represented Exxon for a million years and then had his own defense practice. So it's all in federal court. So you're really kind of dealing with different types of lawyers. And so, but still, if you do well enough in law school, they basically force you, not really, but to go to the biggest defense firm with the biggest salary you can get. So
and that's kind of the rubric that I think we grew up thinking was success, right? Like
you made it.
The amount of money that you earn in a salary determines how successful you are or not. And it takes a while to to really step back from that and realize that is actually a completely wrong understanding.
And then look at your future. Like what I remember sitting there thinking, like, just bored out of my mind. I've never been more bored in my life. I don't know, everything about it. I hated everything about it. And so I remember thinking, like, what am I going to look like in 10, 15 years or 20 years? And then I look at some of the partners, and I'm kind of looking at their lives. I'm like, will that be me? Not my father, of course, man, but even still, all the time I'll look at, my parents' generation and be like, okay, now in a different sense, like next 20 years, will that be me? Where can I see some of their faults and improve my life now? Right.
Yeah.
And so I remember looking and thinking like, oh shit, I don't even want to do that.
Right.
So what, at best, if I just hold out long enough, I could be a partner, I was like, but, so now, right. Then I got to be a plaintiff's lawyer.
Yeah.
And I finally got to make it, and it was great, and I enjoyed it, and I loved thinking more critically, being able to take ownership of 100% of the case. It was something I always hated as a defense lawyer. Always having to like tell a partner what they needed to do and then go watch them do it.
Right.
Right. And, so now I got to create it and then do it. And now I'm in this other weird position where I'm not even really able to do that anymore. Now I'm just like
strictly in the business of law.
Now I'm in the business. So
and that is where I have really found that I love to be as well. I love the business of law, just as I love the businesses for my clients, and I love thinking about their businesses, thinking through risks and liability that they might not realize exists because they haven't been there before.
Right.
But
that's true. Like, every day is uncharted territory.
The business of law, the business of business, right? To me, that is what really ignites me and fuels me And anybody who owns their own thing or has their own firm,
or anything, coffee shop.
Yeah.
That's what I always wanted to own, a coffee
the
shop.
old saying is true that, you're the type of person who would prefer to work 80 hours a week for yourself than, at a large law firm,
I was going to say, wow.
60 to 5
right.
for somebody else.
60 hours for someone else, 80 hours for yourself.
Right.
I was talking about this yesterday. I was on a podcast for John Glon. Yeah. Sorry, John. I did it to her, she's standing in front of me. So I was talking to him about this, and I was saying that there was like a moment back in like 2019, 2020. We had taken on our fourth lawyer, was Adam, who had come over from a defense practice. And I did what I often did in those days was when they would, a new lawyer would start, I would take sort of my docket and hand it off and say, all right, well, here's something to get you going. I did that for Phil. I did it for Mike. Adam's probably the last one that I did that for. But when he started was really where we were kind of in a weird place, because now we were 4 or 5 lawyers.
Yeah.
And that's very different than like 1 to 2 to 3,
Absolutely.
And I started noticing the administration side of things was really eating up all my time. And those were decisions that had to be made on the fly.
Yes.
And so what ended up happening is my docket sort of like kind of faltered, and those poor cases kind of sat there for longer than I was comfortable with. And, and then there's like the feeling of shame, right? Is the lawyer's shame that you've been beaten for so long at a defense firm, you're like internalized, you're terrible. So I handed my docket of cases, and I was talking to my CPA about this. I don't know why. I don't remember the context of the conversation, but it doesn't really matter. What he said was something I'd never heard about. He was like, well, the question was, am I going to hire all these operations people to handle the operations so that I can focus on the practice? Or am I going to hire...
Which is one way to go.
There is no right answer here.
Right.
So, or am I going to hire lawyers to handle the cases so I can focus on the operations and the vision of the practice?
Long-term growth, where are you going?
And my CPA says, well, Justin, you can do it either way. He's like, you can work in your business or you can work on it. He's like, personally, I'd rather work on my business than in it. No, I'd never heard that before. Right? No, because I wasn't a business guy. I was a lawyer, and I had like a psychology degree, and I went and, worked, doing commercial litigation. So working on the business and in the business and the concept of business, didn't know anything about it, but it like struck a chord with me where I thought, well, I'd never thought of it that way. You're right. Holy shit. I could go in either direction.
Which way to go?
So I obviously, I went into the direction of hiring, the best lawyers I could find.
Yeah.
And at that point I felt like I had some of the best lawyers. And so then I just got to pour myself into the operations of the firm. And little by little I've learned more about the business, but every day is something new. Every day is like a new challenge. Whether it's marketing or intake or systems or broken systems. And the biggest challenge is often legacy systems, where it's like, well, we've always done it this way.
We've done it this way because this is how we were trained to do it.
That's what I was telling him. I was like, you do it that way because back in 2016, I wrote it that way.
Right.
What makes you think I knew what the hell I was doing? Throw it away and let's just do something else.
That makes better sense for where we are now. Because like you were talking about, at every stage, right, whether it's 4 lawyers, 5 lawyers, 15, 20, or even revenue points,
sure,
you'll start to see that the systems that you had previously just don't work anymore.
Yeah.
Or aren't serving you well. They might be serving you, but not well. And so reevaluating
they can be an impediment to the growth.
For sure.
And so, right, the systems and the problems. And look, each year with our growth, we encounter new issues and we develop new systems to tackle them. And so out with the old and with the new. As it used to be, when we started getting bigger and bigger, statute of limitations, what we call prescription. I'm dealing with so many common law people these days. I almost have stopped using the word prescription because no one knows what it means. But it's our Louisiana becoming a common law. But we had so many cases that I remember my paralegals like, Justin, in order to track all this, we're going to have to get a spreadsheet. And I was like, yeah, I guess that makes sense. You're right. I was just putting them on the calendar, but that's a good point. Let's do a spreadsheet. I think in those days it was like 3 of us. And probably my guess is we had, I don't know, maybe we had like 150 cases. Maybe it was 200 cases.
And I hope you've moved from a spreadsheet to a project management.
Right. So, Now, as we've grown over the years, that spreadsheet got bigger and bigger and more cumbersome
Unwieldy.
and more cumbersome.
Yeah.
And then
I think even at that time, it was probably not the right decision.
probably,
Yeah.
but we wouldn't have the money to invest in the systems back then. And a lot of those case management softwares that were being pushed out then were
So.
yeah. So now we're in
What about a Trello? What do you use now?
So we use FileVine.
Okay.
And FileVine was a decision I came up with because my lawyers all lived in NetDocuments.
Yes.
Because we're all defense lawyers and that's
Right.
what we knew. My staff all lived in Clio.
Clio.
And lawyers were incapable of going into Clio. There was like a block or like a veil. Like they just were like, no, I can't. I don't know where anything is. And
Did
so
you
we got it into one system.
Did you move from NetDocs to FileVine? Like that's
All
what
of
you're
it.
now using?
Yeah, so we're in FileVine. And so, yeah, now we've got, 1,000 some odd cases. And the spreadsheet, this is not recent, it was a while back, but the spreadsheet just is ridiculous.
Yeah.
So now we run reports, right? And so we have our SOL reports. We've got, our 60, 30, 60, 90-day reports. Now that they've moved the statute of limitations for most of our cases, we now have a midway report, right? Because I was like, you should never hold a case for 2 years. That's
Right.
crazy.
Yeah.
Do something. So now we've got and so every Monday we live in our reports. And so, but you have to grow into the problems.
Yes.
So building out a FileVine system with 50 to 100 cases, like you can, but that's a lot of what I did with NetDocs. Like when I built out NetDocs, we didn't really need NetDocs. At that time we were using like the SharePoint or the OneDrive, but I had this sort of vision. I was like, no, like one day we're going to have more. We should do it now. I remember my wife and I talking about it.
Well, I think NetDocs was, and the reason why I like NetDocs is because at a big firm, and you'll have this background, the DM, the document management system that was developed for them in the 90s
right.
was the holy grail of information
Sure.
for the firm.
Right.
It's
You
where
could search
all
everything.
of the good legal knowledge is stored. And so the ability to search it is like the ability to search a library full of drafts and
Sure.
pleadings and memos.
It's like your own
and
Westlaw,
it
essentially,
is your
right?
own internal Westlaw. And so I saw the value of that. And I'm still with NetDocs, but I think NetDocs has seen its day because now that capability, the document management function, the ability to search through, an entire library of information is just not what it's standard.
Right.
It's not novel anymore.
I don't think NetDocs has kept up with the competition.
And I think FileVine is the next. And so we're there. I'm literally just not wanting to it's painful to move from one system to the other.
Oh, I'm going to tell you what. So for all the FileVine people out there,
yeah.
I use this analogy, and the people in my office are really young, so they look at me like I'm 1,000 years old. But I was like, it's basically like ordering a kite out of the back of a Boy's Life magazine. You'll get it like a year later, and it'll be ribbon and sticks, right? And so that's all you're getting. You're going to have to build it. And I was very kind of bullish on some of this, where I was like, well, I'm not going to sit here and wait a year for the company to build it out, because you have to go through a third-party provider that's going to build it out. And because I was talking to other law firm owners, it's like, oh yeah, we're 18 months into it, we still kind of tweaking. And I was like,
uh-oh,
the hell you are.
Right.
I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
We had it built out in 120 days.
Wow.
And I was like,
great.
we're going to go. Like, just go.
Yeah.
And we'll fix it as we go. Just get in. Go. And we had, it was like April, May, we penned the deal. We had the documents moved over in July. We had the data moved over in June, I believe, from Clio.
What was the number of lawyers you were at that time when you made the switch?
So that would have been in 2023. And so back then, I don't know anymore.
Wow.
So we're 12 lawyers now.
Yeah.
And so we probably would have been like, I'm guessing six, something like that.
So interesting. I could sit here and talk legal tech all day, every day, because just as you were talking about before, the process is part of a business is where the secret sauce is.
Right. Well, and if you're not developing in the process, then you're creating roadblocks.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it's not just like tech talk or like business, chatter. It's all about delivering the best product for the client.
Exactly.
And so if I'm creating a bottleneck that slows down the process of getting the funds out the door, right? So for us, we have a 30-day window for settlements. You settle a case, I want the client walking out of my office with the check within 30 days.
Yeah.
Why? Because if it takes longer than 30 days,
they're very frustrated.
they're going to be really unhappy.
Yeah.
Right. And so, but that means you've got to do all these things in order, like you've got to be really on the ball, ready to go.
Make sure you're holding the insurer's feet to the fire.
Right,
Have we followed up? Has the check gotten lost in the mail?
Right. Medicare, Medicaid,
liens.
Hospital liens, loans, whatever, have you wrapped your hand around all the costs, right? So in these old cases that have been around for a long time, they've been through multiple systems. So now we're having to do a QC like, hey, let's make sure we've got all of our costs. Because remember, in those days, we used to handwrite the checks. Or in those days, we used to. And so, but it's the systems that'll allow you, I think, to they're not going to replace the practice of law. Like that's the artistry of what we do all day as lawyers. But what they're doing is they're preventing system roadblocks from delivering a good result and having a happy client, which is all I care about.
Yes.
All I care about is I want to recover the most amount of money possible, and I want the client to be happy about it, and then I want them to tell others about it, and then that's it. And if you've got those things,
yes,
you don't really need to worry about anything else.
Key ingredient to a good legal practice, right? Happy clients for sure.
Sure, right. I want you to leave me a
but also,
Google review.
And this now as running the firm, like the other secret sauce is a happy team, because happy team members really end up helping your clients, rave about you at the end.
Right. And so I always tell them that I was like, you should be our biggest advocate.
Yeah.
If you can't be our biggest advocate, you're probably not in the right place.
Right. For sure.
Like I should be like your superhero. Like you should have a picture of me over your bed, like a poster with tags.
How's that gone?
Yeah. Everyone looked at me like I was insane when I said that. I was being serious. I'm not saying like I actually want you to like idolize me. What I'm saying is it's your opportunity with the client to promote the law firm. So, if you don't believe in it, like, man, they're not going to believe in it, right? And if you don't believe in it, you're not going to deliver the very best product. I will say, moving systems, they got a lot of growth fatigue back in 23. We doubled the size of the firm. Between 23 and 24, it was like a 3x. And so every day I'd come in and be like, all right, guys, great news. I know y'all are excited, and everyone's like crestfallen. They're like, now what? And I was like, we're gonna unveil, and like we did everything, like and whatever you can imagine about the business, I did in 23, like new phone systems, new internet systems. I don't know why, we just did. We new texting platforms. We moved out. Just every single facet of the business we upgraded, and then we used 24 to kind of like give everybody a breather.
Yeah, settle in.
Right. And then this year we've built out more of our operations and marketing and improved systems as we go.
Yes.
Because when you continue to grow like that, it was just a little helter-skelter sometimes, where you're constantly adding people. And it's really funny. Dad will come in and be like, who is that?
Right. Who are all these people?
She's been here for a year.
Yeah.
But there's, or growth, or like actual physical office space. Well, so I'm notorious for doing this, where I will go expand in the building, and then I'll change my mind at the last minute and be like, that's not enough space. And then I've already blown out the walls, and we've already penned the new lease. And now I'm making an addendum to the lease to the space that we haven't even occupied yet.
Where are y'all located?
We're at 650 Poydras, on the 15th floor. And so we just keep sort of expanding into this area of the building. And I called the building the other day. I was like, we really need a boardroom. And the building manager's like, oh my God, make up your mind. I was like, I will not do that.
I will make no guarantees on that.
I will not make up my mind.
Right.
I intend to make this as miserable and as costly as possible.
Well,
so we're...
Well, and I'm just the opposite, right? So
tell me more about your operations.
I have a completely remote team. My paralegal and my associate both don't even live in New Orleans. They live outside. My paralegal's closer to Baton Rouge, and my associate is in Ponchatoula. So I'm the only one here, and I'm very, very picky about my space.
Right. Sure.
I've done the large law firm thing, and actually when I was at McGlinchey originally, they had a very cool space at 643 Magazine neat. That, the founders had bought and built out, and was really well done, but probably for the 80s and the 90s.
Not practical in the aughts anymore, but it was a cool space. I talk about it all the time.
Then they moved from there, which was, to me, one of the things that I was drawn to from the very get-go is I really have to love my space. Mm-hmm. I have to love it. And so I had moved from 643 with McGlinchey to when they moved into 601 Poydras, very similar to 650. And, you know, I cannot do those types of
Sort of
spaces.
sterile.
I cannot do anything to do
carpet,
with the
beige walls,
the overhead lighting and the, you know, few windows, and I just can't do it. So for me, space is a super important thing. I'm at the CAC.
Okay.
And the Contemporary Arts Museum, they have a place called The Shops on the 3rd and 4th floor where you have the Idea Village, and then a bunch of other startups.
There's another large firm in town that started with a few McGlinchey folk that were out of the CAC. I want to say, like Hinshaw, right?
Yeah, they didn't start there. No, absolutely not. But Jones Walker actually started there from the beginning, and there was a prohibition for other law firms to be at the CAC over a certain growth number. I think they don't care anymore. They're never there. But I love the Shops. It's got a huge synergy. And for me, that's what I'm looking for, right? And again, most of my team is remote. I really was able to confirm on the sailing trip, that I don't have to have people in my space in order to be productive.
Yeah, times are different.
Yeah.
And because people, since COVID, really, we had the ability to before COVID. We didn't have the vision. But, you know, COVID forced us to make some shifts. And because of that, you can hire the best. And they don't have to be sitting on Poydras Street. They don't even have to be in Louisiana. They could be anywhere, right?
Right. They could be overseas. You know, I don't have any legal VA staff, but certainly that's a model that a lot of people have gone towards.
We have a few for back house things, right? Just for things where it's same tasks need to get done, like medical records. Like we order so many medical records that I can either have someone sitting at a desk here, or I could have someone sitting at a desk there, and you know, that keeps them going faster and faster and faster. And they're fabulous. They're fabulous.
Lawyers,
they're
actually usually very efficient. They do their work. You can see that they're doing their work. And so, yeah, I kind of moved past the idea that I have to be in an office with the people that I'm working with. That being said, I did, after COVID, need to get out of my house.
For sure. I can't be in my house.
From working from the sailboat, I closed, you know, several multi-million-dollar deals from that sailboat, in which I was having to go to PJ's Coffee to take, you know, sensitive calls, you know, that, and realize like that is not going to work. And I also don't want to be sitting in the middle of my, you know, 40-foot sailboat living room doing all of this work either.
Right, like shushing your husband as he walks by, right?
Or like, hey, I need you to go
or like
someplace else because I need to use this entire boat for the entire day.
I was terrible during COVID. So my wife's a lawyer. I had the downstairs office. I did not commandeer it. This was all volunteered. She had the crawfish table upstairs in the bedroom. With the 2 screens and all that kind of stuff.
I think that was kind of standard, right?
Right.
Like you got one of the 2 workspaces, and each husband wife combo did their thing.
Opened my laptop. I had it all outfitted. We were ready to go. We're cloudless. I mean, we're cloud-based, right? Yeah. We don't have servers. We don't have it. So we can be, and that's anywhere. A Katrina lesson, right?
Katrina, and then also back to the idea of like, we want to be able to work from wherever, I think.
So, but I can't. So I open my laptop. My kids are come running in. Some nanny's watching the kids. I have no idea who she is. I've never seen this person before in my life. She's like, oh, I'm so sorry. And I was like, you're fine. Like, don't worry about it. I closed my laptop. I text my wife. I was like, I'm going downtown. She's like, what? It's like day 1. I was like, yeah, I don't care. I was like, this isn't me. I can't do this. She's like, you can't go downtown. I said, well, here's what I know. I know that there's going to be a stack of mail in the mailbox. I know that there's checks coming in for our workers' comp clients. I know that it needs to get processed. And I know I sent everybody to their respective houses. So I'm going downtown. Yeah. And so I officially went remote 0 days during COVID. I just couldn't do it. I'm not wired that way.
Yeah.
Everybody else was. And then eventually, you know, people would start to trickle in after they just couldn't take it anymore.
They couldn't take it at their house.
Right. Yeah. My paralegal was like, do you mind? I was like, I don't care. I'm just sitting here with the doors closed and the lights off. Right. I mean, so then she came, and then, you know, one of the lawyers kind of came in, was like, I think I might be ready. I was like, yeah, me too.
I think after that period of time, everybody needed to get out of the house.
But everyone's different. And so some people love it. Some people thrive. It's a great, you know, opportunity for businesses to grow. outside of their, region and being able to hire the best. But I struggle with physically not having my space, right? Like I don't work, if I'm not in front of my desk, I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm just, sending like Roger that emails, and that's it. So, but I think it is very, it is good. And it is,
if you have that type of personality, how have you set up your kind of work-life balance, or is that a thing with you?
Well,
in growing the practice.
So in growing the practice forced me to grow the operations of the business. Right. And so we got to a point where I was basically the director of operations. Then we got bigger and I wasn't even able to do that anymore. So then we hired a bookkeeper, and we had like a fractional bookkeeper and an in-house bookkeeper. We have a marketing coordinator who's fabulous. Then we have a director of operations. She's standing behind you. That's why I said that. And we have a director of operations, and then she oversees all the operations. And so now I'm able to sort of.
You've reclaimed some time.
Right. I'm able to sort of buy my own time.
Yeah.
Right. And so if I want to take the family to Colorado for 2 weeks, I'm going to take them to Colorado for 2 weeks. And this is what we do. We go for 2 weeks every summer to Colorado when New Orleans is at its very worst. It's like hot. And everyone's trying to shoot you or whatever. And it's not quite hurricane season, but it's coming. You need to get all your travel out of the way before hurricane season. We will flee for the mountains. And we've built this system now so that everybody is sort of empowered to have the resources that they need and be able to make the decisions they need. And we have the reporting. And so there's all these fail safes. And so I got back and I was caught up within, couple hours,
That's great.
So there.
How is it though, even gearing down, right? So I feel like what I had to learn and I'm still working on it is when you're in fourth and fifth gear,
yeah,
right? And you've been in that gear because you've been in such growth mode for so long that it becomes almost very difficult. One of the most difficult things is actually not remaining in fourth and fifth gear.
Sure.
It's switching to second gear.
Yeah. So I'll use your analogy and I'll one up you on the car analogy. You ever drive right from here to Houston or Florida, right? So you've gone 70 miles an hour for hours, and then you get off and you're off the interstate and you find yourself driving 50 miles an hour on a 20 mile an hour road. Why? Because your body's so used to being 70 miles an hour that now being 50 feels like a crawling pace.
Yes.
That's what it's like. So when we're growing, man, if the phones aren't ringing off the hook, this malaise just takes over the entire, it's very infectious. Everybody's depressed and everyone's like, oh, the phones aren't ringing. And I'm like, they are it's just not ringing today the way, and we went through Ida where Ida was wild. And so we were signing more cases than we could ever imagine signing,
I bet. Yeah.
Well above 100 cases in a month. And so, so it is hard to come down off that high and that rush, but then, we'll ramp it up sometimes. And then so I find everything starts at intake. If your intake's high, the energy's high and everyone's running around and hustling and everything's
How do you handle
well-oiled.
intake? Let's talk through that process, your intake process.
Yeah. So we have an intake team. And
in-house,
yes. That is something I created myself. So in the early days, I was the intake, right? Especially when it was just me.
Which is the worst.
Yeah, you know what? I liked it,
you
and I'm
do?
I'm very good at it. I will.
Well, I'm great. I will
actually just say
until I'm annoyed.
Right, and it is exhausting. It's a lot of work, and it's a lot of work to be on the phone for the whole day. But then as we grew, I would still handle the intake, and then I would parcel the cases out. And then as lawyers would come on, they would start doing some of the intake, and then I would do QC, and I'd listen to their calls, and I'll pick on Phil because he's a good sport. I'd be like, come sit down, let's listen to your call. And I was like, you didn't sign this. He's like, I know. I was like, why do you think you didn't sign it? And then we would talk through it, and he would, he'd be like, you're right. I see, And so I would kind of coach them all on, look, these people need a lawyer, and they're going to hire a lawyer today, whether it's you or somebody else. So what do we got to do to make sure it's us and not them?
Right.
Because I think they're going to get a better result with us than they will with the
and
the
they
guys
need
across
to
the street.
take that, right?
But your intake, that's just your opportunity to sell. And so I love sales, and so I love the intake. So I did it until I just physically couldn't do it anymore. Then the lawyers did it until they really were struggling with it. And then when we started getting, associates and younger lawyers, it was like, it wasn't consistent. And so we hired an intake specialist. I trained the intake specialist. And then we hired another one. And then, so that is something that I sort of created. And so we keep it in house. I don't like using foreigners or external people. Like, we are in the Gulf South. You can have a Southern accent, like you can get by with that.
Right.
You can have like a little bit of a New York accent. You can get by there. Maybe a little bit of a Texas accent. Outside of that, like, you're just going to scare the shit out of them, right? They're going to think that they have called tech support for Amazon.
Right.
And so no, everything's got to be here. No, we do have a rollover sort of fail safe when everyone's on the line.
You have like a receptionist.
So we have a virtual receptionist, but it's all
otherwise, are you
onshore.
in-house 24/7?
No. So we talk about we go back and forth. For years, we've gone back and forth over this about whether we should be 24/7 or not.
Yeah.
My personal opinion is that the quality of leads after 7:30 dramatically drops, and the quantity of leads on weekends is insufficient. And so we have like a virtual receptionist that will pick up and will route the call according to like how we have it structured in off hours. But I can count on one hand how many really great cases were signed after dark.
Interesting.
I've had other guests on the show who own law firms that tell me I'm crazy. I don't know what I'm talking about. It's always a lot of fun. Like, thank you. Great to have you here. But we just did it again. Every now and then, once every couple of years, we'll be like, maybe we should be investing more in off hours or something like that. And we'll do it. And then we go, nope, still have the same opinion.
Still bad
I
leads,
still think 24/7 is. Now, look, if you're Morgan & Morgan and you're buying ad space, at millions of dollars a month on a national scale of economy, then it makes sense. Or if you're running like your 1-800 ads on TV all night long, right? You're going to need to be able to field those. But you really are panning for gold at that point.
Right.
And so if you like, I like panning for gold, but it may not, you may not get your ROI out of it.
Yeah. It's so interesting. I, like you described, my mother is an attorney. She was insurance defense. And my mentor, Pat Beecham, who was your uncle, also was very pro defense side.
Oh,
right?
for sure.
So very defense oriented. And I was always it was ingrained into me that, you cannot be a plaintiff's lawyer.
Yeah.
We're
the worst.
I'm probably a plaintiff's lawyer, I'm a plaintiff's lawyer in a transactional corporate lawyer's body. But my heart really is plaintiff's law. So I do take some plaintiff side employment cases.
Okay.
And have actually been to the Supreme Court of the United States on one.
Nice.
And won. So I do a little bit of litigation. It's just for fun. It's not the real.
Yeah, like a side project.
It's more of the passion project as opposed to the hustle. The hustle is really focused on businesses and growing businesses, really, not startups. I really like growing businesses who are experiencing the kind of problems that we're talking about here today, problems with intake systems and how to kind of optimize and get to that profitability that they're really looking for. But back to the plaintiff side, the only work that I'm looking for is really plaintiff side employment work, which is very, very specific. But there is no lack of leads.
No, that is the ultimate panning for gold. There are two types of leads that we don't spend money on, that I insist we not spend money on,
right.
And like they will come to us.
There's no need.
We don't, and it is employment work, which I used to do. We used to do labor and employment. I don't really anymore. And medical malpractice. Right. So I won't spend money on med mal leads because I get them 24/7. And 1 out of 100 are even worth discussing. And then 1 out of that 100 are worth, taking to sort of that next step. But yeah, employment leads, especially in this jurisdiction, are tough. And
right.
We did some.
Well, they're not tough. getting the leads are not tough at
no,
all.
No. Handling the case,
yes.
getting a good result, I
Yeah.
think is like almost not even worth it for me,
Well,
for
right.
us.
When
But-
you're comparing the settlement size for a personal injury case versus
Right.
the settlement size for
an employment
plaintiff
case in the
case.
Fifth Circuit is like,
Yes.
and the amount of work that goes into
right.
it.
You
But
have
we've
to have
said-
a passion.
I mean,
for it.
we've done racial discrimination, we've done age discrimination, and we used to do more FLSA, and even some fun FLSA cases.
I do
right?
love an
I mean,
FLSA.
we're a big fan.
Yeah.
We had one where these guys were all sent over to Senacor, and it was drug diversion, and then Senacor would send them out on these third-party contracts to go work in like sweatshops, and they would pay, and then 100% of that money was kept by Senacor. And so we filed, but what ended up happening was it hit the news, and 3 or 4, of us all filed our actions, and we were like number 2 filed by 12
So everything
hours.
got consolidated.
And so everything got
First
consolidated in Texas. It was an absolute nightmare. I'm so glad to be done with that case.
Yeah.
But I thought it was a great case. And so reinforced every time. I'm like, you know what? So when
And
we
for
get those
that are
leads,
watching
we will
that don't know what the FLSA is.
Yeah, Fair Labor Standards Act. So if you have not been paid minimum wage or, a full wages overtime. Usually it's overtime. It's the big thing, right?
And most of it I find is happening because there's a misclassification.
Always.
Like one thing across the board that almost every business that I work for has gotten wrong at some point is misclassifying 1099, people that are working for them as 1099 contractors.
Paralegals, right?
Who are
law firms are notorious for
100%
this.
employees.
Right.
This is, and when you do merger and acquisition work, one of the big things that you do in the due diligence phase is really going in, and they have whole businesses where they audit companies that are going through an M&A deal. And in those audits, I mean, it is across the board that in every single audit, there will be a huge problem with that piece of it, that people are being misclassified as 1099 versus W-2. And then even within W-2 employees, they have misclassified them as exempt and non-exempt inappropriately.
Right.
So, and that's a huge rubric. It gets wrong when you get it wrong, it's very expensive because of the class action claims that end up happening. I mean, get 15 employees together who have not been paid overtime and look back for 2 years, and we're talking about a really good number. And then we're talking about attorney's fees on top of that, plus liquidated damages. So I love an FLSA claim. I love a Wage Payment Act claim.
Sure.
Another big problem that people get into, that bonuses are salary. So if you entice an employee, and they actually just passed a law last year that codifies the precedent on this in Louisiana. So if you entice employees for a quarterly or annual bonus based upon some sort of predetermined metric, and then you fire them midway through them being able to meet the metric, well, guess what? You don't get out of that bonus.
Right. So we see that a lot with
very specific language.
The commission-based guys always get fired before the commission's paid.
Yes.
And then they're always like, well, wait, you owe me my commissions. And then, that's a constant problem.
It's a constant problem, and it's on both sides. I get employers that think like, well, why should I pay this out? And I'm like, well, because depending on how we have structured it, and most of the time that they have not come to me on the front end.
Right.
So we're dealing with some form of agreement that wasn't drafted with that in mind.
On the back end, which is always more expensive.
Which is always more expensive.
Yeah.
So that's a huge problem, in addition to, and also the Wage Payment Act stuff is great in terms of damages and attorney's fees and stuff like that. So I love an FLSA claim. I love a wage payment claim. I love Title VII as well. That's actually, probably my favorite type of case that I take on for personal reasons, is any sort of Title VII sexual harassment claims. I love.
Okay. Well, we will keep that in mind, because we do get those claims all day long.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we'll get leads, and we always train intake on this, because they always feel bad just being like, no, we don't do that. Like they feel like they need to give them something.
Yeah.
And they're like, call this person, call that person. One time they said, call this person. Wait, why would you tell them to call that person? And they're like, well, I feel like you got to call somebody. And I was like, that guy's the worst lawyer. Don't tell him to call them. They're going to blame me for it. So I was like, no. It's okay to just say, I was like, if you called the Gap,
yeah,
and you're like, I would like to order 2 pizzas, the Gap is not going to say, well, my favorite pizza place in town is X. They're just going to say, we sell jeans.
Right.
You know, it's like, you don't always have to like figure out a way to make them a pizza. But we do like to say, but, you know, if we have some, we can say, call Amanda Butler.
Do you have like a referral sheet that you use? Yeah.
We will. Yeah. We'll have for some of those like criminal stuff, employment,
family law.
Yeah. I don't mess with family law anymore.
Talk about the business of law. I didn't realize that really family law practices are really the supercharged, probably behind plaintiff and employment work, but or plaintiff personal injury work. But I'd never realized how much money
it's a lot.
A family law firm churns out.
Dinner with a guy in Atlanta on Thursday, and it's out of Arizona where private equity can own a law firm, and it was like a $30 million family law practice. Yeah. And I was just like, really?
Blown away.
That's so much family law. That's amazing. I don't know that any firm in Louisiana is a $30 million family law practice. I can't think. I mean, even the best or the biggest. That's substantial. So, well, I'm getting this. So I've done it again. I've sort of sat here and pontificated until the tape has run out. But thank you so much for coming.
Pleasure.
To all of our listeners, tell them where they can find you if they have a business litigation or business formation, corporate issue, growth issue, or an employment issue. We are at www.lawgroup.biz. We have contact forms. You can always give us a call, an email. Get in touch if your business is growing and you have questions specifically around contractors versus W-2 employees. If you have questions about your insurance, what you need to be doing from a compliance standpoint, we help with all of those issues. Awesome.
And we love a merger and acquisition deal as well. So if you're buying a business, if you're buying into a franchise, if you're selling your business, that's really our ideal client.
Fascinating. All right. Well, cool. Well, hey, thanks for coming on. This was a lot of fun. It's great to see you. I haven't seen you in many years. I'll see you guys later. Thanks. Thank you for joining me today on Above the Legal Limit. If you enjoyed the show and you want to hear more about business and law, hit that subscribe button. If you didn't like the show, keep it to yourself. Remember, there's no limit to what we can achieve. We will see you next week. Until then, even though we're above the legal limit, let's drive safely. Cheers, everyone.